African outside. That's how you feel if you add it.
Okay.
Yes, that's the saying. The longest president of Ghana. He ruled. The Danes were not the first to be here. The Swedish and Portuguese in 1652 were the first to be here. And when they came, they established an eating lodge over this very space. They used it as a storage facility where imported items such as gunpowder, mirror, tobacco smoking pipe, clothing, whiskey were imported, stored in that eating lodge, where they traded these items for gold and ivory with our forefathers. When the Danes came, they wanted to put up a permanent structure. So they went to the king, negotiated, and then finally they bought the land at a price of 3,200 gold florins. Then they destroyed the eating lodge built by the Swiss and the Portuguese. And then they built a fort. With time, the fort was enlarged and converted into a castle named after the king of Denmark, King Christiansborg. Hence the name Christiansborg Castle. Good. And because the castle is also situated on the land, the whole of this community, we call it Osu.
Osu.
Yes. And Osu, the word Osu has so many meanings, but historically it refers to an outcast. Good. And it's also called Osu Castle. So when you hear Osu Castle or Christiansborg Castle, they are all referring to this building. But when we look at West Africa, we come to realize that the Portuguese were the first to discover the Guinea coast of West Africa in 1471. When they came, the first structure they built on the entire African soil was the Elmina Castle. They call it St. George de Mina in 1482. So they were maintaining the monopoly of the transatlantic slave trade. Other European powers such as the Dutch, the Danes, and the British came in to break the monopoly of the Portuguese. So the Portuguese extended their trade from the Elmina Castle to Osu. They started trading with the Ghats. That was when the Dutch, the Danes, the Dutch was the second to arrive in 1637. So when they arrived, they fought with the Portuguese. And they dislodged the Portuguese from the Elmina Castle, took ownership of it, and then headed to Accra, built Fort Crèvecoeur, which we today call the Asha Fort. So when we look at the arrival of the Europeans, you come to realize that Ghana was the most preferred destination for trade between the Europeans and the West Africans because of the abundance of gold. Good. And all these European powers established their trading posts along the coast of Ghana. Over 80 of them, forts and castles were built. But as of now, only 28 of them still standing. And these 28 of them are ascribed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites because of their historic value. Good. So all the European forces, as soon as they build those structures, they name it after kings of their respective countries. So the first to be built was the Elmina Castle, named after the King George of Portugal. That's why we call it St. George Castle. And this one by the Danes. And then all the other forces. Good. So what were the Danes doing here? They engage in what we call the transatlantic slave trade.
They were being naughty.
Good. Transatlantic slave trade. Initially, when they came, they started as traders. But at the early parts of 1600, there was an influx of sugarcane plantations in the Caribbean. another part of the world, which meant that they needed manpower to work on those sugarcane plantations. And that was when the transatlantic slave trade began, where human beings were added to the gold and ivory trade. So African commodities became like prey, gold, ivory, human beings line up against gunpowder, mirror, tobacco smoking pipe, clothing, whiskey. These items were exchanged for the imported items in a form of a barter trade. Barter trade is a trading activities where goods exchange for goods without cash. This was what was going on.
What were they traded for? So they were given the humans, the Africans, and what were they getting in return?
No, we were given. They came and then exchanged the gunpowder, mirror, tobacco for gold and ivory as well as slaves.
Right. Okay.
Good. So
didn't they want any of the humans from the other side as well to come over?
They didn't want no Danish to come and do work here.
No. They didn't want their own people to come and work. The slaves were gotten from the hinterland, not closer to the castle or the communities, but from far. Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Senegal, and then also the suburb of Far in Ghana. That was where slaves were brought to this place. And as they had to trek on their foot from far to this place, in the course of the journey, some of them became weak and some even died on the way. So in the course of the travel, as soon as they arrived here, they had to strip all the slaves naked and then inspect every part of their body, from hair through the vital parts to the toe. And during the inspection, those with injuries, those with wounds, their prices were less. The healthy ones without the injuries, their prices was much higher. It also took into consideration the determining prices of the male slaves and the female slaves. With the male slave, how tall, broad chest, muzzle determined the higher the price. With the females, it took into consideration their breasts, the buttocks, the teeth, and the facial expression. It means that the more beautiful a female slave was, the higher once the prices were sorted out. And they had to pass a process called branding. Branding was a process where a metal was put in fire. They would light a fire, put the metal in the fire, and then when it becomes red, they take it off from the fire and they use it to tag the slaves, to brand them.
Did they do that to kids as well? Children?
Yeah. Because we had slave raiders, we have slave merchant, we have slave agent. It's just like today's shopping mall. When you go to shopping mall, you have many agents with different shops in it. That was likened to that of. So once the branding was done and the ship had not arrived at the shore to take them to the Caribbean, Brazil, and another part of the world, then they were being led into a dungeon. The dungeon is a very dark place where the slaves were kept there awaiting the arrival of the ship. So almost all the forts and castles that were built, they built it for three main reasons. Number one, to serve as a residence or accommodation for them. Number two, to serve as a marketplace for the transatlantic slave trade. And then lastly, to serve as a storage facility. That is why we have the dungeons. It was not only the slaves that were kept there. Gold and ivory, cola, spices were also kept there as well, because they built it as a form of safe for storage. Good. So when we look at this very compound, you come to realize that it wasn't built that huge. It started as a small structure. And due to that, it changes hands. So as and when it changes hands, additions were made. Those additions came with different years. When we look here, we see MCMX That is 1912. That was when these additions were added by the British, and it was solely reserved for royals.
I think.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
And then when we also look at this section, we see 1921. That particular one was built by Sir Governor Guggisberg, a British administrator and a governor. When we look at this one, GR 1950, George Reagan, that is King George of England, Queen Elizabeth II's father, 1950. That was when those additions were made. So as and when those additions were made, they touch the ears and balls on those walls.
1950. That's what I'm thinking. That was 10 years before I was born.
Yeah.
Wow.
So now we're going to take a walk into the dungeon, to experience where the slaves were being put. Please, let's take a walk.
Where are y'all from?
Huh?
London.
London.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I'm from New York.
Okay.
Oh,
Love your hair.
Thank you. I just got it done here.
Ah.
nice. What's your step?
Yeah, mind your step.
Thank you.
This is a typical example of a dungeon. And these dungeons were built, as I told you, in a form of a safe. And when you look at it, it was also built in a form of storage facility. So once the branding was done, the prices were marketed, they were being led to this place. And as soon as they entered inside, they put shackles or chains on them. And these shackles were used on them to confine or restrict their movement. So this, where we're currently standing, is the outer chamber, which used to house the male slaves. 16 male slaves over here, and 16 female slaves in the inner chamber as well. This was the very space where the slaves used for their everything. In case they want to go to toilet, they go to ease themselves. This gutter serves as a latrine. This was where they eat themselves, they wee, they spit, and this space was a place where they sleep and they eat there as well. And due to inhygienic condition within the dungeon, some of the slaves could not survive in the dungeon. They died. Most of them were also infected with diseases and germs. So they wait, when they realized that most of them were infected with diseases and germs, they wait around 12 in the afternoon when the sun is very scorching. They march them out at the courtyard naked with their shackles on them. They were being left there for hours so that the heat of the rays of the sun will kill some of the germs on their body, and then they march them back. They were being kept here maximum 6 months. They were being fed once a day with food and water. And this was a place, initially, the Europeans themselves used to come in to give them the food. But it got to a point where some of the slaves became so aggressive that when they come in to give them the food, they were being attacked to the point of death. They said, we find a means of giving them the food, but we will not come in by ourselves.
So they were trying to fight back?
Yes, they resisted.
Okay.
Slavery wasn't made that easy as we have been made to believe. It wasn't so. They resisted. And this hole serves as a spy hole. There were people on top watching over the slave. So when some of the slaves became so aggressive, this was a place where they used to pass the food from this very hole in a form of a bucket with a rope. They drop it for the slaves. And it was the survival of the fittest. Once it was dropped, the strongest ones in the dungeon would have to enjoy the meal. when they are satisfied, the less stronger ones can also have access to enjoy the leftover. This was the practice in a dungeon. And the only, yes, please.
Sorry, one question I had about the slaves being in the dungeon. So I feel like in history class we're taught a lot that slaves were put in the ships and immediately shipped to Caribbean, America,
Right.
Europe. But, so you're saying they were held here for months before they were put on the ships?
That's right. They were brought from the hinterland far to this place.
In the interior?
Yes, one Senegal, Burkina Faso, Tamale, and other side. So they were brought from far to this place. So as soon as they arrived, they were being kept here, awaiting the arrival of the ship. So once the ship arrived, they were being taken to board the ship. They were being taken through the last exit we call the door of no return. And once they exit the door of no return, they will never ever have an opportunity to return back to their motherland. Their dignity, their identity, and their personality were all taken away. They were flawed.
Yeah.
They will be given different identities by their foreign masters. So once the ship arrived, they were being communicated to, and then they were being led to the door of no return to board the ship. And once they board the ship, they were being taken to the West Indies, Brazil, and other part of the world. And that was when there was an influx of sugarcane plantations in the Caribbean, which meant that they needed manpower to work on those sugarcane. And that was when the transatlantic slave trade began.
So you know the kings, what tribe did they belong to? The
The
kings that
kings.
made the
The
deal
Danes.
with the Dutch or the Danes?
No. When you look at the slavery, when they came, they arrived, they had children. Some of them got married to the indigenous.
Oh,
And then they had children. So these children serve as intermediaries to be able to communicate to both parties, effective communication. So when you look at it, they resisted, our ancestors actually resisted. And there were so many ethnic groups. And I did mention that when the Portuguese arrived, they met us without nations. We were not having nations. There were no Ghana, there were no Nigeria, there were no Burkina Faso. It was a vast land. But we rather had kingdoms and empires. Where we had the ancient Ghana Empire. We had the Mali Empire in Timbuktu. And then we also have the Songhai Empire. So at the early stage of state formation, there used to be what we call inter-ethnic state warfare. Kingdoms were fighting among themselves. They saw themselves as competitors. So when you, as a Kingdom A, you want to enlarge your territory, you go into a fight with Kingdom B. Once you are able to overpower them, their people becomes your slaves. They becomes your captives. They run errands for you. They farm for you. You use them to enlarge your army.
But it wasn't slaves in the same sense of the word, so it wasn't chattel slavery.
No, it was, we refer to it as a domestic slavery. It was like a servitude when a task was given to, and then they were able to fulfill the task, they were being freed. Chattel slavery came at the early part of the 1600s. That's why I spoke about it. That was when there was an influx of. So when you look at the domestic slavery, the slaves were being fenced by their owner, fed by their owner, housed by their owner. With the chattel slavery, they were being left to do all these things on their own. The only source of light and ventilation was through this window. And some of the female slaves were used by the Europeans. Once they take you out as a female slave, they give you preferential treatment. They will let the security agencies to take you out, bath you, give you nice clothing, perfume you, nice meal, because they were using them. They were raping them. And that was the genesis of Kafkas and the mulattoes in the world system today.
So it wasn't really preferential treatment, it was just to make them good enough
Because
for the
others-
whites to rape. Like, it wasn't that they were getting benefits from being washed.
Because they were being fed once a day.
Right.
Oh,
And
they were
once you
getting
were being
food.
selected, you could have an opportunity to be fed 3 times a day. That's right. So this is a brief history about the dungeon.
So
We
you're
have a
saying-
lot of places. Yes, please.
Sorry, so you're saying, so I'm aware that before like colonization, I know Africa is very gerrymandered. Like these countries should mostly be like the borders are very artificial because, like my family is Jamaican, but like from Africa they're like Cameroonian, Nigerian, like Benin, Togo. So you're saying they brought people from all the way over there to here.
This was the hub of the transatlantic slave trade.
Yes.
And you can, Senegal, we have only one fort or castle over there. And then the others, Ghana is only where we have about 80 plus.
80. Wow.
80, and only 28 is still standing. Right. So they were being brought from the hinterland. Even though slavery also existed in those places, but this was a hub. And this was the main last exit point, Ghana, because of the sea. The last exit point where slaves from West Africa were brought. And the Ghana was the last exit point for them to be transported to the Caribbean. This is the water system.
Oh well.
Yes, a well. And this water system was built by Carl Gustav Engman. Engman was a surgeon, a medical doctor, brought from Denmark to come and take care of the sick people within the castle. And when he came, with time, he became a governor of the castle. And during his tenure as a governor, there was an issue of water crisis within the castle. He used some of the slaves, the captives, they dug out this well around 1753 to 1763. The issue of water crisis within the castle was solved. Engman was offered a princess of Osu, and he got married to her. They had many children. And as we speak, names such as Engman, Vanderpoy, Bannerman are rampant in the Osu enclaves.
Is that surnames or first names?
Yes, that's the surname.
Was this a black?
So
You're
they
talking
are
about
the
black woman,
ancestors. Come again?
Yeah.
princess. Okay.
They
Yeah.
are the ancestors to Carl Gustav Engman. Good. And then also, where we currently started, this is what we call a presidential walkway or stairs. This, let's take a walk closer.
What was the princess's name?
Na Ashioka.
She was a slave.
No, I told you slavery was not done within the closest communities. It was done far.
Which I'm surprised. 'Cause I feel like it'd be easier to capture people in like the coastal cities. They went all the way into the interior.
To the interior. Yes, and those closer serve as intermediaries, a form of communication.
And one question I have is, how did they transport everyone around the land? Like I know,
Yes.
it's like horse buggy,
They were being made to walk on their feet
walk
from
all
far.
the way to a cross.
Yes, and
How long would it take?
oh, it could take 2 weeks or even more. You could imagine slaves. That's why I made mention that before they arrived here, some of the slaves they died, and some of them become weak. And once they arrived, they inspect that some of them were not, wealthy to be sold out. So that was when the inspections were being done.
And what would
To
happen
ensure
to the
that-
ones that weren't worthy of being?
They were kept with them, but once the ship arrived, the weak ones were made to stay in the dungeon. The strongest one will pass through the last exit point we call the door.
And they would just die?
They were just left there until when they recover.
Oh,
Right.
So what I still don't understand, you know, the kings that made the deals, what tribe were they from? I know they were going inland to get the people, but they themselves, what tribe were they
We
from?
have Aquamus, and these Aquamus, we have the Gas, we have the Mole Dagwani, we have the Guan, we have many of them. And all these people were having their kings. And but then we were not united. Today, we are under one umbrella as a nation, Ghana. We consider ourselves as one. But those days, that wasn't the case. So Akwamus, they were the warlords. They were the superior kingdom. So they were even fighting battles for other kingdoms. And then once they defeat, you can hide them. They will fight a battle for you. And once they defeat, you have to pay them in a form of homage. You give them some slaves to enlarge their territory as military. Good. And this is the presidential one. Since the inception of this custom, we have had many historic visits by international dignitaries, such as King George, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Charles, now King Charles, and other high-ranking diplomats. They've all visited the custom. So when such high-ranking diplomats are to come, we have the place painted red, which serves as a red carpet. So they walk on it right at the entrance of the gate through to the inner part of the stairs to the castle to see the governor and the president. And the inner part of the stairs was solely reserved for this high-ranking diplomat, high-profile dignitaries. So when they are to come, he passes through the inner part of the stairs, and other VIPs passes through the shoulders. So, and when you look at on the 50 Ghana cedis, please, is there anyone with the 50 cedis? I want to show you.
Yeah.
Look. When we look, which part of the 50 cedis can we locate this very stairs?
Oh, yes.
So that is the 50 cedis, and this is. But then around 2007 to 2009, this was the highest denomination currency of Ghana. And but then this castle was the seat of the president of the Republic of Ghana. And this is how you view the castle when you stand outside. This is how you view it.
Okay.
Currently, the seat of the presidency has been relocated from here to a different location we call Jubilee House.
Oh, we passed it.
Oh, yes.
Some call
we
it
just passed
Flagstaff
it.
House.
Yeah, we saw
So
it.
when you look on the highest currency as of today, which is the 200 Ghana cedis, you see the Jubilee House on it.
Yeah.
It tells us that the highest currency goes with the seat of the president of the Republic of Ghana. And Ghana, we had independence. Please, Ghana, we had independence on the 6th of March, 1957. Colonized
1957.
by the British. Even though we had independence, we were still under the authority of the British. So Queen Elizabeth II was the head of state of Ghana until Ghana became a republic, 1st July 1960. So when we became a republic, Queen Elizabeth II was the guest of honor. She was invited. And symbolically, when she came, she handed over the administration to the first president, Dr. Kwame, which meant that Ghana was no more dependent on the British as our colonial masters. We became a sovereign state. And when she came, there was a room assigned for her. She slept in that room on a special bed.
Wow.
We're going to take a walk in there for you to have a look at this bed.
But for enslavers, they're treating her really well.
Come
I
again.
know. I was gonna say, why should die? Why are they like? If either you're independent or you're not. Like in America, like we don't mess with the British at all. Like if what's his name, Rishi Sunak came, we're not putting him up in a nice hotel.
Yeah. Why
now-
was she even invited? That's why. That was
Why was she there?
Because she was the head of state. And when we had independence, symbolically, she's supposed to come and hand over Ghana to the first president.
Oh, just
Then she can
give
leave.
it.
Then she
Yeah.
can leave after.
Give me and don't even walk.
That's what
Red
happened.
She
carpet
can pay
for
for her own
her.
hotel.
She had red carpet.
It's unfortunate, but this is what happened.
Yeah.
You are now or VVIPs.
We're walking right in the middle where all the VVIPs would walk, as we should.
This is Queen Elizabeth II bedroom.
Wow.
She was not the only one who slept on this bed. Prince Charles, now King Charles, also slept on this bed. So in 1961, when she came, this was where she slept for 11 days.
Same sheets?
Yes, and then also in 1977, Prince Charles, now King Charles, also visited Ghana and also slept on this very bed for 3 days. So according to the history of this castle, these are the only 2 personalities who have used the bed. So the lighting system, the wardrobe, and the bed was manufactured in England, brought to Ghana prior to the Queen's visit. This was a spot where the governor would stand there and give instruction when there is assembled time in the morning to the slaves. Particular place where I'm sitting, the dignitaries I spoke about, Queen Elizabeth II, King George, Barack Obama, and other high-ranking dignitaries, they all sat this very place and took pictures. So you can as well sit there. Wow.
Oh, sorry.
Queen Elizabeth has sat there, so you're not going to sit there.
That's why I'm sitting here.
This is a church, a chapel.
So they enslaved people and traded Jesus.
Let's come in.
I have a question for you, and I don't expect you to answer it. Why do so many Americans follow Christianity if Christianity is most used to enslave people?
Yes, because when you look at Ghana, you come to realize that the Portuguese were the first to arrive. And these Europeans, when they arrived, they spread their religion. They indoctrinated, spread their religion to the indigenous. So when you look at the coastal areas, you come to realize that majority of this population are Christians because of the presence of the Europeans. The Arabs, yes.
Does anyone question that though? Is anyone hey, maybe we shouldn't be Christians since that was used to enslave our people?
When they came, some of them, they came as missionaries to propagate the word of God to the people. And the first missionary, this very chapel, was built by the Portuguese. And Basel, I hope you've heard of the Basel missionaries. It began here in 1828. So when you look at Ghana, we are about 35 million people. And 72% of this population are Christians. 17.6 are Muslims, 5.2 are the traditionalists. But the traditional religion was the indigenous African religion. This was the religion being practiced by the Africans. And with that religion, we believe in the supremacy of God. And then we also believe that next to the supreme being are the ancestors. and the ancestors occupies a very significant place in rituals, such as pouring of libation. So when there was an upcoming event, such as naming ceremony, funerals, or marriages, we give them prior notice of the event by pouring libation on the ground. You get a whiskey or alcohol, and then you get water. As you're sprinkling it, you chant the names of your ancestors. When you do that, you invoke their spirit. Come into the midst of the living, provide guidance and protection. This was the only religion that were being practiced by the Africans. Until with time, Islamic faith and Christian faith were imported to Africa. But the unfortunate thing is that we have left our roots as the indigenous traditional African religion practitioners. We get used to the imported religion, Islamic faith and Christianity. So the religion of Africans, when you come to particularly, there are some places in Ghana, such as the Middle Belt, the Ashanti region. The Europeans were not able to penetrate to that place. So they are still practicing the indigenous religion. But many of us have regretted of being Christians and Muslims. And some of them have gone back to their roots as the indigenous traditional African religion practitioners. This current generation were all born into the family. Your father a Christian, you were born into the Christianity, you grew up in Christianity, you think Christianity is the best religion. You were born in Islamic faith, you grew up within the Islamic fraternity, so you think Islamic religion is the best. So that is why most of the Ghanaians are Christians, because of the arrival of them. Let's talk about this very chapel. This is the very chapel built by the Portuguese, and around 1828, Basel missionaries arrived. But when the Danes built the castle in 1661, in 1679 they sold the entire castle to the Portuguese. The Portuguese then built this chapel, and then when they built the chapel, they changed the name of the castle from Christiansborg Castle to St. Francis Xavier's Castle, named after one of their popular Catholic priests. So they occupied it for 4 years. In 1683, they sold it back to the Danes. And when the Danes repossessed the castle, they used the chapel built by the Portuguese as a school to educate the offspring of Danish officers born to Ghanaian mothers. They have passed, and the mulattoes, they all school. They used to call this very chapel a mulatto school. This is where they have cast in the mulatto school. And then also we're going to talk briefly about these two personalities. We have the first man being the first president of the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. This Nkrumah studied in America, Lincoln University, graduated, came to Ghana, joined a group of elites, and they formed the first political party in Ghana, UGCC, United People's Convention. But with time, he realized that the motto of the UGCC was that they needed independence within the shortest possible time. He said, no, we needed independence right now. So he broke out from the UGCC and formed his own party, CPP, Conventions People's Party, to propagate for the idea of self-governance. Now, eventually, he became the first prime minister and subsequently the first president of Ghana. When he became the first president of Ghana, he wanted to bring the ideology of America to Africa, where he wanted Africa to have one common currency, one army, one central. He wanted Africa to be called United States of Africa, just as America is being called. So he was moving from region to region, country to country, soliciting for support to unite Africa. But according to reliable sources, the CIA, they realized that this man was so visionary and wanted to implement the African unity. Having established Organization of African Union in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, that when they allowed him, he was so visionary that when they allowed him, he could eventually unite Africa. And they never want Africa to be one. That when Africa becomes one, there will be a powerful tool that the West cannot handle. So they collided with our own people to topple him through a coup d'etat. He had to run to exile in Guinea, Conakry. Eventually, he lived the rest of his life there. Fairly ill, sent to Romania, and he died in Bucharest, 1972. His remains were then brought back to Ghana, sent to Kwame Nkrumah, which today is a pilgrimage ground for the entire tourists across the world. So he is the greatest man of Africa. And his greatness can be measured by the degree at which he is held in reverence, not only by Ghanaians and Africans, but the world at large. When we look at his ideas, political struggles, progressive undertaking have gone into history as one of the most outstanding leaders in a fight against racism, colonialism, imperialism, and apartheid. Next is a man called Assamini. This was a man who tricked the Danes. He challenged the Danish. Can you please have a seat? We are almost done.
Oh, wait, you can sit here?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No,
right, you can sit. You can sit. Mm-hmm. So this man challenged the Danish rule in this Christiansborg castle, tricked the Danes, and seized the castle from them. Ruled as a governor from 1693 to 1694. So when you look at the history of this castle, he is the only black man who has ruled the castle as a governor. The rest of the rulers are all white men.
What was his name again?
Assamini.
So, as a governor,
Asemeni, Assamini. When you Google, you get more information about this man.
so as a governor of this, what did he do?
Good. As a governor, he held some of the slaves as captives.
He held them.
Some of the Danes as captives.
The Danish?
Yes, he held some of the Danish as captives. And then, when you look at him, he established himself so much wealthy that he was trading with all nations during the slave.
Hold on, so who was he trading? He was trading black people.
He was trading with the Europeans.
Yeah, black people. He was trading black people.
The slaves, with them, he continued the slavery activities. So this man planned taking over the control of the castle from the Danes, moved from his hometown, eastern region of Ghana, to Accra, and then learned the Danish language. Within 1 year, he became very proficient in the Danish language, came to the castle, disguised himself as an interpreter and a cook. And because he could speak the Danish language very fluently, he was able to secure a job as a cook for the Danes in the castle. And
As a what? Sorry.
As a cook.
As a cook. Okay.
So during his stay in the castle, he studied everything about the Danes, their operations, the arrival and the departure of the slave ship. Merchants used to come to inspect the merchandise of the Danes. Having studied enough, he left the castle unannounced, went back home, and then came back with 80 military men. And when they came, they pretended they were traders to inspect the merchandise of the Danes. And as part of the tradition, before one could purchase a gun or ammunition from the Danes, they will give you the gun. And then you are being allowed to try it. Once you get satisfied with it, then you pay for it. 80 of them, when they came, they pretended they were traders to inspect the merchandise. They were given the guns to try. And on the blind side of the Danes, once the guns were given to them, unknown to the Danish, there was a hidden gunpowder on some of them. So once the guns were given to them, there was a fierce battle in the castle. Finally, Assamini and his men were able to kill all the Danes. The 25-year governor, by name Nicholas Jensen, came out from her bungalow, bare-chested with a sword, realized that his men were overpowered, had to run, jumped the walls of the castle straight into the sea, swam about a quarter mile to Fort Christiansborg, which today we call the Asher Fort, built by the Dutch. So it was the Dutch that received him and treated him with his wounds and reported to the king of Denmark that their trading post, Christiansborg Castle, was seized by Asselin and his men. It was the same Dutch led a negotiating team between Asselin and the Danes that Asselin should sell the castle back to the Danes. And they were ready with their ammunition to fight him once he refused to sell. So he realized the strength of the armory of the Danes. And then he finally agreed and sold the castle back to them at a whopping price of 50 marks of gold. He, however, did this, left the castle, he locked all the doors, the door of the castle, and then sent the original keys to the castle to his hometown. And as we speak, about 26 bunch of keys made with silver is now part of the royal stool property of the Akwamfi, where Asselin comes from. He went with the keys as evidence to show to them that he was once a black governor of the Christiansborg Castle. So when you look at the history of this castle, he's the only black man. The rest of the rulers are all. So they have established a museum at Akwamfi, a very small museum, we call it a palace museum, display the keys to the tourists at a fee, indicating that a man of his caliber was able to trick the Danes, seize the castle from them, rule as a governor from 1692. So when everyone was killed, the governor runs away. Then he took the gun of the governor, wear it, and declare himself as a governor. This is a brief history about the chapel with respect to these two personalities.
But the thing is, when he took over, did he continue the slave trade?
He continued the slave.
Yeah, well, that's not good.
He continued, but rather held some
But that's
of the
not
Danes
good.
as captives. He held some of the Danes as captives. He continued the slavery. Just 1 year.
Did he enslave them? Did he make the Danes slaves?
Yes. He sent some of them to his hometown.
To be slaves?
Akwamfi, yes.
What is underneath here?
This is a dungeon. There is a dungeon. So when you go to a Milan Castle, Cape Coast Castle, you come to realize that the chapels were all built on top of the dungeons.
What does ECOWAS stand for? I forget.
Come again.
What does ECOWAS? ECOWAS.
ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. That is ECOWAS.
There's nothing in history book will teach you that.
On the highest point of the castle. The old castle. This is the end of the old castle. And this was where Denmark, the Portuguese, the British, this was where they used to hoist their national flag over here. And all this section, from this particular section to the other end, were all built by the first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, when Ghana attained independence. Where the black star is, uses to be the offices of the President of the Republic of Ghana. All the presidents have used there as their offices, including the vice president, some of the ministers. But there was a president by name Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlings. He used to receive foreign delegation there and the local delegation in here. So we're going to take a walk in there to his office, get to know why he wants to do that. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. So this office of former President Flight Lieutenant Gigi Rawlings, the longest president of Ghana. He ruled from 1981 to 1992 as a military leader, and then transitioned Ghana from military leadership to democracy, and then ruled for 8 more years as a democratically elected president. So he ruled Ghana for 19 years. The longest president Ghana had ever had. This is his portrait. The father from Scotland, a Scottish father, and the mother a Ghanaian. He also established a helipad in the middle of the garden because he was also a pilot. That's why he was called Flight Lieutenant Gigi Rawlings. So, anytime he looked through the entrance, realized that his life was under attack, his life was under threat, he quickly ran down, take the helicopter, and then fly away from here. So he was able to avoid 4 coups d'etat in this very office, which meant that if he was to be in the other offices, he could have been. This is a brief history about the office of the former president, Flight Lieutenant Gigi. From here, we're going to take a walk to the last exit point. We call the door of movement. Can we please continue? We are almost done.
Is that the garden up there?
Yeah, we're going to the garden, that's right.
Yeah.
Check out the rebar.
Mm.
I thought there was a pool here, so it's like what the president and Queen Elizabeth they would fill the pool together.
Oh. This
You know, this is a spiral walkway, and this was a place where the slaves have to pass through to the last exit point, the door of no return.
This is the door.
Yes, please. I think it's good I talked about this place before we go through the door of no return. Please come. What is the steps? This is what we call a tunnel.
Wow.
And during the slave trade era, the European abolitionists, as well as reformers who opposed the slavery, they began writing books and pamphlets describing the evils of slavery. This writings was able to convince the world that slavery was immoral. So Denmark was the first country to abolish slave trade in 1803, to abolish the transportation of slaves in 1803. UK did same in 1807. America also abolished the slavery in 1865. That was when the abolition. Portugal was the last country to abolish slavery. Even though the Danish abolished the slavery, some of their slave agents realized that slavery was a booming business, that they could not stop it. One of them was Christian Henry Richter. He built a house at Osu. Build this tunnel, link the tunnel to that house, where the slavery continued but illegal. So slaves were lured into that house, awaiting the arrival of the ship at the door of no return. Once the ship arrived, they were being taken from that house, passes through this tunnel secretly the ship to the Caribbean and other part of the world. But around 1862, Accra experienced an earthquake. So part of this tunnel was riven in pieces, rebuilt to preserve the history, so that the world would come and learn. And during that earthquake, the tunnel that linked to that house was blocked. So this is a tunnel. Good. So from here, we're going to the door of no return. And once the slave, you passes here, you exit here, your identity, your personality, your dignity were all taken away from you. You'll be given different identities by your foreign master. So once the slave exits this very door, there used to be smaller boats and canoes where they will put the slaves onto the smaller boats and canoes. Ferried, the main ship will arrive within the waters about 200 meters away from the shore. So they put the slaves onto the smaller boats and canoes, ferried to the main ship, transported to the West Indies. Most especially the island of St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John's Island, which today is known as the United States Virgin Islands.
I didn't know that.
These islands were owned by Denmark until 1917, when they sold it to the United States of America at a price of $25 million.
Can I ask one thing? So what happened to the island of Trinidad?
Good. So slaves from this particular were being sent
To Trinidad as well?
Trinidad as well as Brazil, Jamaica, Asia, Europe, and most especially slaves from this particular fort were sent to the West Indies because the Denmark owned those islands, and later part was sold to America. 3 Virgin Islands, which today is known as the United States Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John's. So in the Middle Passage, once they realized that as a slave you become weak, there was nothing they could do but to dump you in the sea. I'm making reference to a British slave ship. We call it a Zong Massacre. This slave ship took off from Jamestown, Accra, Ghana, on their way to Jamaica. Instead of taking, the ship had a capacity to take 200 slaves, but they took over. They took over 400.
Wow.
And on their way to Jamaica, due to navigational error, they got lost, found themselves in the Dominican Republic. When they were supposed to return to Jamaica, they realized that they were without enough logistics, such as water, and take care of everyone on board. They had to let go of over 130 of them. They dumped them live in the sea and went away. So we started celebrating the Emancipation Day in the Caribbean around 1848. Ghana decided to join the celebration in 1998. The symbolic thing was that the 2 mortal remains of African American, Lady Krista from Jamaica, Samuel Carson from America, their mortal remains were flown back to Ghana, put on a canoe, sailed to the door of no return at the Cape Coast Castle, signifying the return of all the slaves, the return of all the Africans that were taken away. It presumes that the Africans who were taken away survived and returned. Henceforth, the door of no return changes, ceases to be called the door of no return, but rather the door of return as well.
Well,
So
we
when
just
you look-
returned.
Yes. So when you look at the slavery, the first enslaved African captives left this very shore to Virginia in the United States of America in 1619. 2019, all the way from 1619 to 2019, when you calculate it, you get 400 years. The then president, Nana Edudankwa Akufo-Addo, called that year a year of return. where he used that as an opportunity to appeal to the African Americans that their route began at this very shore, wherever they are, that they should come back home. That there is no place like it. They should come back home, help develop Africa. In that year, 2019, we experienced unprecedented return by especially the African Americans. Over 1 million plus returned to Ghana.
To live or like to visit?
Yes, some of them have built their houses in Ghana. They call Ghana their second home. They go to the States and comes back to Ghana. And then we started, during the colonial rule, after slavery, there was what we call colonial rule. And this colonial rule, most of the land belonged to Africa were taken over by the Europeans until the Africans themselves began forming groups to fight for their right. And the first group to be formed was the Movement for the Right of Persons of African Descent. It came into effect after the World War I.
Can I ask you something? So where did these people come from? The sea, this one? Did they enter this one?
You're talking of the trash?
No. The Danes, when they came, did they approach Africa, this side of Africa, from the sea there? Did they come with their ships?
Yes. And the other side. The ship cruised to the other side. And the castle was built. So there's another passage from that side straight.
So didn't the people see that these ships was coming?
No,
they were coming to get them.
They would be communicated to that the ship is ready for them to take to them. And once, some of them, they are from the hinterland. They are not closer to the communities here. And they've never seen a very big sea like this. So as soon as they come out, some of them, they shivers. And some of them, they got sea sicknesses and diseases. When you are even a fisherman, the first fishing experience you take off, you vomit because of the smell within. So, and then the African nationalists, such as the African American and the Black Americans, they also came together to form the Pan-African movement after the Second World War. And among their leaders was W.E.B. Du Bois. Their mission were to fight for the right of persons of African descent. The last group to be formed in the United States of America were the United Negro Improvement Association, led by a professor, a Jamaican professor and a writer, Marcus Garvey. All these people were with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. That's why when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah became the president, he wanted to bring the ideology of America. But it couldn't materialize. Had it not been the timely intervention of the CIA, by now Africa would have been united. But any leader who surfaces to ensure that he tries to unite Africa, that leader would be assassinated by the West. Until the British rule until 1807, when the abolishment of the transportation of slaves came into effect. And then they realized that the slavery was not profitable. That happened during the Industrial Revolution. So they went into plantations.
Them waves are so rough. This is the Atlantic Ocean, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, Mum, I don't like how that's moving actually. Look how it's coming, Mum, look. Nah, that came closer. No, that came way closer than it just did before. Yeah.